This week on Christian World News, they're calling it genocide. The U.S. steps up to help protect Christians and Yazidis from ISIS. Plus,
what put this on your heart to organize?
When you see heads being chopped off, when you see people being burned alive, when you see people put in cages and drowned.
Franklin Graham steps up to help the persecuted church. And a miracle for 1 million Chinese orphans. See how one village is changing the lives of special needs children.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 크리스천 월드뉴스입니다. 존 케리 미 국무장관이 이슬람 극단주의 무장단체 IS가 기독교인과 야지디족, 시아파 무슬림을 대상으로 대량 학살을 저지르고 있다고 공식 선언했습니다. 오늘의 첫 소식입니다.
Pushing it right up to the deadline set by Congress, Secretary of State John Kerry said the words Christians and others waited to hear.
In my judgment, Daesh is responsible for genocide against groups in areas under its control, including Yazidis, Christians, and Shia Muslims.
It's a critical first step towards protecting Christians from ISIS and other Islamic radicals in Iraq and Syria.
Every jihadist in the Middle East believes they can kill, kidnap, enslave, and otherwise torture Christians and other religious minorities, and they believe they can do it without repercussions.
In northern Iraq, Assyrian Christians are an ancient people descended from the first followers of Christ.
We are, as Assyrians of the Middle East, we are on the verge of extinction.
Juliana Tamarazi recently visited the town of Teleskov in the Nivea plains of Iraq, where 200,000 Christians have fled from ISIS.
The homes are destroyed. When you walk inside, their closets are all broken, the beds are all overturned, the kitchens are destroyed.
Father Douglas Albazi kept this bloody shirt as a reminder. The Iraqi Christian was wearing it when ISIS terrorists kidnapped him on his way to church.
They used to put, for example, pistol in my head, handed it to him, and just they click.
The torture continued for 9 days.
They used the hammer to broke my teeth, my nose, and my back.
The government asked several Christian groups to collect evidence. Their 280-page report lays out known crimes against Christians, including a list of those murdered and witness statements. It includes this menu ISIS produced for men interested in buying Christian or Yazidi slaves. 200,000 dinars buys a child aged 1 to 9. And the rules? It is not allowed for any customer to purchase more than 3 spoils, except for foreigners like Turks, Syrians, and Gulf Arabs.
The word, and the only word for what is happening, is genocide.
There's ample proof, Anderson says, that ISIS wants to rid the world of Christians. In an issue of its magazine, Dabiq, ISIS published, "We will conquer your Rome, break your crosses, and enslave your women. If we do not reach that time, then our children and grandchildren will reach it, and they will sell your sons and grandsons as slaves at the slave market."
This is about lives, and it's about the impact on real people on a daily basis in a setting that we couldn't possibly imagine.
According to the UN, genocide is acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. The only time the U.S. has designated a genocide while it was happening came 12 years ago in Darfur. Then lawyers determined the designation didn't require the U.S. to act. Secretary Kerry's genocide designation helps keep the plight of these Christians near the front of U.S. foreign policy. Advocates wasted no time celebrating. They're already working with the State Department to make sure Christians are represented in Syrian peace talks and that the property rights of Iraqi Christians forced to flee their homes are enforced.
There are going to be borders redrawn, constitutions redrafted. It's absolutely essential that the Christians have a voice in this process, or they will have no place in the new Syria and in the new Iraq.
There's already an effort to create a safe haven in the Nineveh Plains so that Christians, Yazidis, and other minorities can return home, govern themselves, and rebuild their lives without fear of extermination.
If you care about the presence of Christianity, the Christian witness, in this very gospel-poor part of the world, you will support the idea of a safe haven.
In spite of the horrors they've experienced at the hands of ISIS, Christians in this part of the world are experiencing a revival of their faith.
They have told me repeatedly, it is because of persecution that has been inflicted on them that they have grown closer to Christ, that they find themselves praying more, that they're thirsty for the gospel more.
I look to my blood every day, and I remember. And this is what's happened even to my people every day.
He's fortunate he's alive to remember, unlike so many of his Middle Eastern brothers and sisters in Christ. Now the same advocates who pushed for the genocide designation are moving to keep up the pressure to ensure the Obama administration not only talks, but acts to protect those persecuted Christians and other religious minorities. They hope to make real progress before the next administration moves into the White House. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
한편 프랭클린 그레이엄 목사는 박해받는 기독교인들을 위해 전 세계가 함께 나서 조치를 취해야 한다고 주장했습니다. 이를 위해 올해 말 러시아 모스크바에서 세계 지도자 집회를 개최할 예정이라고 밝혔는데요. 집회 장소를 모스크바로 선정한 특별한 이유가 있다고 합니다. 그 이유가 무엇인지 함께 만나러 가보시죠.
We're doing this in Moscow. And people will ask me, well, why of all the places would you go to Moscow? The reason is because under communism, the church in Russia suffered more under 70 years than any church I know in modern history. The priest of the Orthodox Church, they lost about 99% of their priests. They were executed. Baptists, Pentecostals, Catholics, they were taken out and shot. And so here is a church that understands and has lived through persecution. Why would we want to have a conference in like the United States where we've never had that kind of persecution, or go to another country where they haven't had that kind of? Let's have it in a country where the people understand and they have lived through it themselves, and that's why we're going to Moscow.
What put this on your heart to organize?
When you see heads being chopped off, when you see people being burned alive, when you see people put in cages and drowned. We work in the Middle East. We work a lot in Iraq. We have worked for years in Syria, and I get the reports back from the churches what's happening to them. We've got to do something to draw attention to the suffering church around the world. And so much of that is now under Islam. But we also see it under secularism here in this country. Where gays and lesbians will target bakers and people like that so that they can put them out of business, use the law to put them out of business. And that's why it's so important to get lawmakers in there who can help change these laws so that Christians aren't persecuted because they stand for their faith or because they want to live out their faith, and they're not going to be penalized and put out of business.
What do you hope to accomplish?
Draw attention to the world to focus on this, and hopefully the nations of the world will see the importance of standing behind people and defending them. And Prince Charles said several years ago that Christianity will be extinct in the Middle East in the next 5 years. At the rate it's going, next 5 years. The Christian community will cease to exist in Syria, where it has been since the Apostle Paul went to Damascus. The church has been in Syria since the Apostle Paul, and it's being wiped out. The church has been in Iraq. The church was in Saudi Arabia up till a few centuries ago, and Islam has finally destroyed the church and has killed the Christians, and they had large Jewish communities in that part of the world. They have been destroyed. And so we're seeing now the elimination of the church throughout the Middle East by Islam. And they call it radical Islam. You can call it whatever you want. It's Islam.
What can Christians around the world do to support the summit?
I think pray, but we've got church leaders from about every country in the world. We'll have over 1,000 leaders coming to Moscow. And the Orthodox are going to bring all of their leadership from the Orthodox world. It'll be the first time that anything like that has happened with evangelical Christians. The Catholic Church has said they're going to support it, that they're going to be sending their representatives to it as well. So it's Christianity. Now, people may condemn me for, well, Franklin, you're hobnobbing with these people who are not evangelicals. That's okay. They represent Christ. They represent the cross.
Well, up next, after 5 years of war, a ceasefire and peace talks in Syria. What does it mean for the hundreds of thousands of refugees who fled the fighting?
한편 이슬람 극단주의 무장단체 IS로 인해 고통 속에 신음하고 있는 많은 이들이 있습니다. 특히 북부 이라크 지역의 기독교인들과 야지디 난민들이 그 주인공인데요. 우리가 계속해서 관심을 갖고 함께 기도해야 할 이들이기도 합니다.
Faces of Christian and Yazidi refugees from northern Iraq. They fled the brutality of ISIS when the jihad army took over their towns 2 years ago. Today, many are still living in refugee camps, dependent on assistance from the world community. The men can't find work, the children can't go to school, and they wonder, will they ever go back to their normal lives and to their homes? And we ask you to continue to remember them in your prayers.
시리아 내전은 무려 6년째 계속되고 있습니다. 현재 평화회담이 진행 중이지만 시리아 내전으로 사망한 사람만 최소 25만 명에 달한다고 합니다.
What started as a rebellion against the Assad government has turned into a larger conflict involving Russia and the U.S. It also fostered the rise of the Islamic State, which, as we know, has established a Muslim caliphate in parts of Syria and northern Iraq. Most of Syria's population has fled the country, causing a major refugee crisis that is overwhelmingly surrounding nations.
네, 정말 도움이 절실한 상황인 것 같은데요. 이를 위해 국제구호기구 월드비전이 나섰습니다. 월드비전이 난민들을 위해 어떤 사역을 펼치고 있는지 함께 만나보시죠.
The number of people that are being affected continues to increase, and the ways that they are trying to cope with this crisis by moving out of the region, by continuing to move to neighboring countries from Syria, just indicates that it continues to get worse. And in particular, I think it's families who have children and are trying to keep the families together that are having a difficult time, especially with this.
I know you've been helping refugees, but now with this ceasefire in place, how are groups like World Vision helping people inside Syria?
Over the last 6 months, the intensity of the fighting had increased, and access to different communities was getting more and more difficult. At this point in time, with the ceasefire and with the cessation of hostilities, we're finding that we are able to reach more places with a bit more security, but we are unclear yet how long that will hold.
And it's still very risky, I'm sure, but peace talks are underway. And how likely is it that these folks can return to their homes? And what happens if they do? Won't they still need help?
World Vision just completed a study on the cost of the economic cost of the crisis on Syria, and at this point in time, it's $275 billion, and that does not include the cost of reconstruction, and so it's going to be an immense task. Also, I think the social implications, particularly for children whom we would expect to both inherit and rebuild Syria. There have been 24.5 million years of lost education, and so the task as we look forward is immense.
And besides ending the war, what's the greatest thing the world community can do to help these refugees now?
World Vision recently conducted a survey, and 70% of the population they surveyed in the United States said that people would be interested to help. 44% said that they were doing something, and only 30% said that they were actually praying for the crisis. So that's certainly number one. As Christians, we pray for mercy, and we pray that this would be resolved. The second thing is to become more informed. A conflict like this, it makes people feel like they're very distant.
And when we know that World Vision is a Christian organization, and many of these victims are Muslim, so what impact does it have when they actually see Christian groups reaching out to help them?
We work with any group, regardless of religion or race or creed. They understand that we might have a different religion, but thus far we have been accepted very well in every place that we've sought to work.
Okay, Wynn Flotten from World Vision, our prayers will be with you and your team. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, Destiny Makers, how one church changed 70 lives and the lesson it's teaching others.
몇 년 전 중국의 한 마을에서는 아주 놀라운 일이 일어났습니다. 70개 가정이 마음을 모아서 구하온 아이들의 양부모가 되어주기로 결정을 한 건데요. 이 마을의 사례를 모델로 삼아 중국 전역에서 부모가 없는 아이들을 돌보고 있는 단체가 있다고 합니다. 함께 만나보시죠.
For 18 years, Robert Glover has had a dream. To see 1 million Chinese children moved from orphanages into local, loving families. That dream is becoming a reality in a corner of China's Hunan province.
And it was just so remarkable. You know, what was going on in this village was the dream that we had been anticipating.
It all started a few years back when families in Yangjai village set out to change the lives of children in a nearby orphanage.
And I think the amazing thing is they started to really go deep and study the Bible, and they found this bit about widows and orphans, and it really just impacted them.
And these weren't ordinary children.
The children had a very tough life before they were found by the policeman or be collected to the orphanage.
They've been abandoned, and you imagine being abandoned in a city at a very young age and not having anyone to fend for you. And we know where the children have maternal deprivation, they will develop sometimes mental illness, physical illness, and even die.
These children lived in a Chinese government institution. They had the infrastructure and all the facilities, but
they're not able to get any kind of family love or care.
Glover's team discovered something special about the village.
People here, they give their real heart to the children. They love the children, and they support each other.
And that became evident when 70 families became foster parents to 170 children.
All the children were placed with this village from the Kunming orphanage, and up to 99% have difficulties, physically and mentally.
That didn't matter to the villagers. You see, the majority of Yangjai is Christian, and the families knew that this was the right thing to do.
It is quite incredible, because I think most of us, when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we think about is ourselves. These people, they get up and they think of these children, and it's just absolutely phenomenal.
Their act of love had a profound impact, bringing the community together like never before.
This is the dream that has come true. To see, you know, not only the mothers and fathers, but the brothers and sisters, the uncles and aunties, and then the extended family, the whole community come together.
Glover believes what families in Yangjai are doing should be the model for taking care of orphaned and vulnerable children.
And all those people working in institutions are going to suddenly think, oh, I'm going to lose my job. So there's going to be a bit of a fight and a battle. The better way is to say, let's work within the institution and retrain some of the staff to move with the children into the community as support workers.
Glover is the founder of Care for Children, an organization that teaches government-run institutions how to move children from the orphanage into local families. He says he's simply practicing a biblical model.
And we just come back simply to that point. God made the family for children.
So far, Care for Children has placed more than 300,000 Chinese children in families across the country.
The government has realized, the academics have realized, a lot of the NGOs are here. I think it's the church that's behind. The Christian church needs to wake up.
In 2003, the Chinese government invited Glover and his family to move to Beijing so they could introduce this family-based care throughout the country. As a result, the government took a historic step in 2014 by changing legislation to state that family placement is a positive alternative to institutional care.
I shed a tear because it took 17 years for them to change that legislation. It took lots of children's transformations to change that legislation. And I think that is, phenomenal, because that's not about me. That's about a faithful God.
China says it has 576,000 orphans, but outside groups put the number closer to 1 million. Glover says many of the families taking in orphans are Christians.
The biggest Christian revival in world history is happening now in China. And so as that's happening and we're placing children in the family, it's not surprising that the families that are coming forward are the Christians.
For the 70 foster families in Yangjai village, the experience has been life-changing.
特别的爱他们，他们对我们对自己亲生的还要那么想我们也是那样的爱他们。
有的，但是困难总可以解决嘛，困难是少的嘛，是吧？最开心，很开心的，
For the children, it has been equally transforming.
我爱大家。
我爱爸爸妈妈。
Glover says the smiles here remind him of the dream God put in his heart to help transform the lives of a generation of children across China.
You know, what we're giving these children is an opportunity to have that identity and security and love and nurture in a family and a community.
George Thomas, CBN News.
한편 CBN 오퍼레이션 블레싱 팀은 네팔의 외딴 마을 히말라야에서 사람들이 따뜻한 겨울을 보낼 수 있도록 도움의 손길을 펼치고 있습니다. 이곳은 지난해 강진의 여파로 여전히 어려움을 겪고 있는 곳이기도 합니다. 오늘의 마지막 소식입니다.
Most have little to nothing to protect against severely cold winter temperatures, so OB provided residents in the village with warm polar jackets. All the villagers, including babies and young children, received the winter clothing. Look at that.
오늘 준비한 소식은 여기까지입니다. 저는 다음 주에 다시 찾아오겠습니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.